Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Ron McBerto is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. As you know, we were off yesterday for some very, very, very bad news. Of course, I lost my mother-in-law yesterday. The ordeal began as I spoke to you guys several days ago, I believe, on Christmas Day, when just before dinner, my mother-in-law got a massive stroke. The ordeal of dealing with the American medical system was then evident personally to yours truly. As someone who has always had health insurance, however expensive, however thieving, however bad it was. I mean, we always had good coverage we paid for. And knowing that after a certain age, one is relegated to Medicare, and given that today, in today's healthcare market, what you see advertised on TV all the time now is, folks, we have something that we give you a gym membership. We give you all these things because Medicare Advantage is great. Medicare Advantage is what you need. Medicare Advantage, a private arm of Medicare, is what's good for you because the private sector is best for everybody. Well, folks, I am here to tell you a real story. But before we get into it, and I ask all of you that are watching right now, to stay with me, because while today's show will cover the endeavors that we went through with my mother-in-law's healthcare issues with the Medicare system, with the American healthcare system, there is much that I want to talk about beforehand. Before we get into the subject at hand, before we get the program started completely, what I do want to talk about first is Iran. And the reason why is I think there are two issues with Iran that's occurring right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the little subtext that I did starting on Sunday with what occurred in Iran and what's been going on. And then we'll move further thereafter. But what I want to do right now is first start with Iran. And with the first thing that I want to go is how Chuck Todd drilled Pompeo, and then we'll go across to what exactly that means. Then I'll catch you guys on the other side. Chuck Todd interviewed Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, today, and something came out that I was very proud of Chuck Todd of. He forced Pompeo to tell the truth, if only partially. But here's the deal. It is a certainty that the actions of killing Qasem Soleimani will cause Americans danger. It is certain that it's not only going to cause military dangers for all of our personnel around the world, but it will also cause danger on Americans vacationing throughout Europe, throughout South America, throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East. So what Donald Trump has done by fanning the flames unnecessarily is completely putting your life, anybody vacationing's life, and even people here in the United States at risk. And how do you know that? Chuck Todd said it plainly as he went ahead and interrogated Mike Pompeo. Check this out.
Can you confidently say America's safer today?
Absolutely.
How do you square that statement with the fact that you're advising American citizens essentially to leave the region, particularly Iraq? We have the Homeland Security Department bracing Americans for cyber attacks, saying that we know the Iranians have been through our infrastructure. It is likely to happen and there won't be a warning from it. It doesn't sound like we're safer today after this.
Yeah, Chuck, we're definitely safer today. 100% certainty that America is safer today.
Then why did we put out
In
that
the moment,
warning
Chuck,
after the Soleimani? I mean, we do expect retaliations against American citizens now, correct?
Chuck, you're concentrating on the second and the moment. It may be that there's a little noise here in the interim and that the Iranians make the choice to respond. I hope that they don't. President Trump has made clear what we will do in response if they do, that our response will be decisive and vigorous.
In other words, maybe there's a little bit of noise. Maybe a few Americans get killed here and there. These are Americans that otherwise would not have gotten killed. Maybe a little bit of noise. But guess what? If there's a little bit of noise, we are going to come with full force. In other words, full war. So in effect, what they're saying is we started this skirmish so that we could have a rationale to create a real big war. Welcome to the American military-industrial complex. Welcome to wag the dog. In other words, we want to go ahead and detract from impeachment. And we are going to come together as a country country to try to re-elect Donald Trump. If America ever falls again for war being used for a purpose, killing people being used for a purpose, hurting people being used for a purpose, then we would deserve all that we get. I doubt it. I think Americans are very smart, and Americans in 2020 will end with a landslide for progressives who would start moving this country back to where it needs to be, a country with a moral spine. Okay, I hope you got that part. So what you saw is Pompeo, he got Pompeo. Are we really safer? Better, how can you say that? Well, the one problem I had later on is that Chuck Todd allowed him to get away with a lie that sort of put some culpability on the previous administration. I want you to listen to that, and then we'll take this on the other side. This one, however, this is a very important concept here, because this is the undertone that Republicans are going to try to use to protect Donald Trump on the Iran issue. So we have to be very careful in understanding this. And for those who came on for the story, for what we're going to talk about, the inhumanity of the American healthcare system, we are going to hit that right after this. So please stick with me. Thank you very much, Pitchforks from YouTube, for your condolences. I appreciate that. Yes, we are going to talk about that after we talk about the Iran issue. So please share, please stick around. We have a whole lot to talk about. So here's the second one that I want you guys to check out. Okay, today, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, appeared with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, and there was something that bothered me about the interview that he gave. He gave Chuck Todd an interview, and there's a portion of that interview that I want you to listen to. And then I'm going to tell you how, in as much as it looks like something innocuous, how important I think it is. Check this out.
You guys talked about a maximum pressure campaign. The fact that you've had to go to military, doesn't that tell you that sanctions haven't worked and the maximum pressure campaign is not working?
Just the opposite, Chuck. We suffered from 8 years of Iranian support from America. We gave them billions of dollars. We gave them resources. We allowed countries to trade with them, to build up their economy. What we are now having to correct for is the enormous economic activity that took place during this Iranian nuclear deal that President Trump rightly got out of in May of 2018. It's taken a little bit of time, and it will continue to take time, but we are going to restore deterrence. We just had a big hill to climb up, Chuck. We'd seen hundreds of thousands of people killed in Syria. Millions have to depart the region. We'd seen Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, the PIJ in Gaza Strip, all of these terror organizations, the Shia militias that we are now challenged to push back against today, all underwritten by American policy in the Obama administration. We've flipped a switch. We're draining those resources. We're going to protect in America and keep American people safe.
Okay, I want you to notice what happened there. Pompeo, in effect, is saying that President Obama is who caused this problem by giving $150 billion to Iran, and also the nuclear treaty is what made this an issue. That has all been debunked. First of all, the money that, whatever it is that Iran got, it is their money. It wasn't our money. It was their money, and we gave them nothing. We paid them nothing. We paid them no bribes. I had somebody on one of my Facebook pages says, oh, Obama gave $150 billion to the Iranians. All of that is false. But here's what concerns me. First of all, Donald Trump needs to tell folk that he did the right thing when he withdrew out of the nuclear treaty, so that if something happens, he has some sort of a backstop. Well, here's what's happening. Iran is getting out of control as far as he's concerned, so he decides to invade and then at the same time blame President Obama. But here's the kicker. This is better orchestrated than most people believe. As a national blogger, I get a lot of folks sending information. Hey, can you post this on your website? I thought it kind of strange. So I took a look at it and I was like, oh my God, this is well orchestrated. The first thing that came was commentary submission. And this was a well-written, multi-page commentary. They wanted me to post this on my website, and I imagine they're doing it with thousands of websites out there that have national reach. And it starts like this. The title of the thing is The U.S.-Iran Maximum Pressure Campaign, a new proxy war in the Middle East, and it's a question mark. And then it says, the United States has hurled its first airstrikes in nearly a decade against Iran-backed military forces in Iraq and Syria, checked under the umbrella of a maximum pressure campaign whereby draconian U.S. economic sanctions compel Iran to move to more worthwhile enterprises at the table of negotiation. It now seems evident that this political betrothal is now steering the U.S. into a new proxy war in the Middle East. But then you go deeper into the page, it says the following. It also seems evident that while Ilan Goldenberg, both a former Pentagon and State Department official in the Obama administration, asserted that the maximum pressure campaign is not working because the Trump administration has no idea why it's applying pressure or what it wants, the killing of Qasem Soleimani, head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, Quds Force, and architect of Tehran's proxy conflict in the Middle East, illustrates that Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign is starting to deliver. In all truism, the United States would never have felt obligated to assassinate an Iranian general had it not been for the senseless foreign policy failures of the Obama era. So it's interesting. They started sort of sounding like a down middle of the road, but near as you get into the middle of the document, it is really an attack on Obama and then saying, hey, Donald Trump's policies is working. These guys are well orchestrated. They have control of the full media. They make sure that all outlets get their information that they want to put out there. I'm going to tell you something, folks. I don't get this on the left side. We have to be more proactive in telling our story, in telling the message. They can win this battle about, oh, we needed to invade Iran, because we are not out there with this same type of marketing. The paradigm has changed in how we get policy, in how we get things done. And if those on the left don't realize it, we have to be doing these same things. We have to be speaking with the same word. We have to be speaking with the same voice, lest we get right back into a major war in Iran, a major war in the entire Middle East. Folks, we got some work to do. Now, let me tell you what gets to me. When former Republican strategists are the ones that are better at framing Donald Trump, it should upset us. It should let us understand that we have got to get with the program. I want you to see how Steve Schmidt handled talking about this particular issue, because Steve Schmidt, better than most Democrats or Republicans, laid on the line. Check it out. Iran effected its purported revenge today by sending ballistic missiles to hit 2 American bases. Their foreign minister, Javad Zarif, sent out a message that said, Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense under Article 51 of UN Chapter targeting base from which cowardly armed attack against our citizens and senior officials were launched. We do not seek escalation or war, but will defend ourselves against any aggression. And soon thereafter, our child president responded. He got the olive branch that he needed to tone down what could turn out to be an explosion, a real war. This is what Donald Trump tweeted. All is well. Missiles launched from Iran at 2 military bases located in Iraq. Assessment of casualties and damages taking place now. So far, so good. We have the most powerful and well-equipped military anywhere in the world by far. I will be making a statement tomorrow morning. I mean, it's so childish the way he writes. It's so childish the way he sounds. It is like, oh, my marble is bigger than your marble. I mean, it is so ridiculous. If people weren't getting killed in the process. But you know, somebody explained it in detail today. We all know who Schmidt is. Schmidt came on to MSNBC and he articulated perfectly this entire Iran ordeal. Check this out.
Define for us this moment you and I find ourselves in right now.
The United States has been in a long, protracted state of hostility with Iran, going back to the revolution in 1979, 41 years. But tonight is the first night where you saw direct engagement between the military of the Islamic Republic of Iran targeting the United States of America. Ballistic missiles aimed at Iraqi bases that hold or house American personnel. So we're at the most dangerous hour that we have been at in the Middle East with regard to our national security, and there have been many precarious hours in our lifetimes. Right now, tonight, this could very quickly spiral out of control into a regional war. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. We know that this president is ignorant. We know that he's rash. We know that there's no plan. We know that he makes policy by Twitter and by watching Fox and Friends in the morning. And so we stand here tonight in almost the 20th year of war in the Middle East, trillions of dollars of American treasure already evaporated, thousands and thousands of lives lost, tens of thousands of Americans already wounded in these wars, at the edge of a new disastrous chapter. And so tonight we pray for restraint, but when we look at Trump, when we look at his volatility, when we look at the decision making, when we look at the evisceration of the diplomatic corps, the attacks on the intelligence agencies, on the professionals who understand these issues, Nobody should underestimate the danger of this hour tonight.
Donald Trump, an ignorant president. Donald Trump, a president who has no clue of history, a president who has no aptitude for the job. Donald Trump, the clear and present danger. One hopes that irrespective of who becomes the Democratic nominee, soon that Democratic nominee, more than likely a progressive, will take us out of this morass that we're in. A clear and present danger to America, the president, the child president of the United States. Okay, now let me first, before we are going to get into the program portion about healthcare in a minute, but I want to say this categorically. Today, I hear all kinds of comments by both sides about Iran on TV. And I must say that it is very upsetting because we don't understand the game that Donald Trump is playing. And we don't understand that America right now has been trained by our mainstream media, meaning the plutocracy-driven mainstream media, to accept things as a show, to accept things as what they call a real-time program, to one of those, what do you call those shows that are in real time? Reality shows. So Donald Trump is the master of reality shows, and the mainstream media has allowed America to live within a reality show realm. Now, high and mighty, and we progressives, we are smart and we understand things, and we're going to tell things the way they are in the calculated languages that are very accurate, in the languages that make sense, in the truthful languages, but in a manner that America does not absorb in today's day, where they have been indoctrinated by a media that has screwed, that has fried the brains of a large percentage of Americans. So what do we need to do? Here's what gets me. Let me give some examples. Donald, there's a good chance that Ukrainian airplane that fell out of the sky was probably accidentally missile striked by an Iranian missile. There's a good possibility that has occurred. Now, what that has done is that has changed the subject. So we're not looking at the stupidity of us killing Mr. Qasim, whatever his name, Qasim, whatever his last name is. We are not looking at the stupidity of doing that and how many Americans are likely to be killed by future terrorist attack directly related to Soleimani's death, to Soleimani's assassination. We are no longer talking about that. We're now talking about, because again, the mainstream media is so messed up, they can't talk about several things at the same time, or they cannot come to conclusions, okay? So we're talking about this missile that knocks out a plane. We understand that because the mainstream media is a bit not very smart. Well, they are smart. They're just doing their master's job. That's what they're going to concentrate on. Every Democrat or every progressive that comes on TV should say that plane that was likely hit by an Iranian missile would never have been hit if we had not killed Soleimani. Those are the dominoes falling from us killing Soleimani. In other words, a lot of innocent people have begun to be killed because we killed one person that wasn't a good person, but could be contained, could be managed. But you don't hear that from the Democrats. The Democrats sit back and they just let it go. Let's start thinking about how to tell a message, how to create a narrative in these times, in these real times. That Iranian plane that was hit, the narrative should have been changed immediately by the Democrats. That is the dominoes are starting to fall. Innocent people getting killed because of Trump's actions. Right now we have 85 or 65 or however many Canadians dead, Iranians innocent dead, Ukrainians dead because Trump did that. We have to change the subject. We have to understand what the subject really is. Trump unleashed the deaths of many. And we have to learn how not to let them drive the message, but we drive the message with truths. Trump is responsible for that Ukrainian airplane falling out of the sky. Trump will be responsible for any acts of terrorism against Americans or Westerners going forward, because he has opened Pandora's box where Obama and Bush had it contained. Come on, people. Donald Trump is very good of getting a win out of a defeat. Progressives, Democrats are very good of getting defeats out of wins. The biggest example of that is losing the presidency by 80,000 votes even after winning the presidency by 3 million plus votes. Taking defeat out of a win. We have to learn. We have to understand how these things work. And when that occurs, then one will understand exactly how things work. Let me tell you, this is a progressive country, but it is a progressive country where the conservatives, and there should only be a very few conservatives, but they're the ones who control the media. A lot of folks are going to say, oh no, the media is liberal. The media is not liberal. You can't have a media controlled by the corporatocracy being liberal. That is liberalism and corporatocracy are mutually exclusive. Okay, what I want to do now, folks, is simple. I want to go ahead and relay the story again. The title, let me go to the program. Today's program is titled, Even in Death, our health. And by the way, folks, this is a call-in show. You can give us a call at 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Title of the show today is, Even in Death, Our Healthcare System Displays Its Inhumanity. Subtitle, Everyone is not affected by the inhumanity of our healthcare system at the same time, but ultimately they will. The thing about it is Americans currently have a very short attention span. Folks, we have got to pay attention. We have got to keep our eyes on the ball. We have got to stop these people from changing the subjects in such a manner that it scrambles our minds from doing what needs to be done. So everyone is not affected by the inhumanity of our healthcare system at the same time. That dynamic has allowed it to thrive with continued increasing forms of inhumaneness. It's time to end it. I will wish the healthcare experience of my mother-in-law's death on no one. Suffice it to say that was on display. What was on display was the inhumanity of our healthcare system, the greed that is characteristic of our economic system, and the tacit acquiescence to this evil by too many of us. We are not evil. We are not immoral, but we have acquiesced to it. We have acquiesced to it. Fear is a bad thing, and our corporatocracy has instilled in too many, which has paralyzed us from the ability and will to transform this immoral system into one we can be proud of. I told you guys the story, but I'll summarize it for those who are here new. Folks, if you're just joining us, please remember to share this. And not only share this, please remember to become subscribers of Politics Done Right. And how do you become a subscriber of Politics Done Right? I'm throwing that into the stream right now. Go ahead and go to patreon.com/politics done right. Patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. Please become a subscriber. We need your funds to continue what we are doing. This is how real news, real media gets done, because right now we know we're in the state that we're in because we have a media that the corporatocracy uses to confuse you. So I'm asking you so kindly to become a member of Politics Done Right and the independent media. And you know what? For those of you who become members of the independent media, you can also go ahead and get a t-shirt, right? What is it? I support independent media. I support independent media. And again, if you go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right, you can become a subscriber and put that link in the feed. And likewise, I'm putting the link if you want to support our funding of our equipment. That's in there as well. And if you want to come through us via PayPal, I have it in the stream as well. And of course, there's always purchasing those great t-shirts at our store, store.politicsdoneright.com. Okay, going back to the media. Going back to the story at hand, because this is an eventful, a hurtful story. Yesterday, let's start from the beginning. On Christmas Day, just before dinner, my mother-in-law had a massive stroke. And as I've mentioned in several other articles and videos, when the paramedics came to pick her up, the first thing that they asked for was insurance before they even touched her. And then they started to ask for the Medicare card, and we gave them all of that. But they acted like if we had not given them that, I wonder would they have taken her up. It's pathetic. It's immoral. It's our system. And we are responsible for electing people who allow this system to continue. But anyway, she went off to the doctor, and after they were done doing all they could, they went into her brain and they removed the clot, and she lost her speech, and she lost much use of her right side, and there were a lot of issues. She had a stroke. She was sick. I mean, she looked like she was going to be improved some, and as soon as they saw that marginal improvement, remember, this is Medicare Advantage. There are different kinds of Medicare here, folks. But the private sector wants you to have Medicare Advantage. So they go to all the old people and they try to sell them Medicare Advantage. You know why? Because Medicare Advantage is controlled by the private sector. Medicare Advantage is controlled by private companies. And these private companies charge the government 20% more than Medicare. It goes to them. It goes to Medicare Advantage plans. And then they entice people to buy Medicare Advantage plans by saying, hey, we're going to give you a health club membership. Oh, we're going to give you this. And they give you a lot of cheap stuff. How many old people are going to constantly use these damn healthcare facilities? Not many. So, they buy it on the cheap from the different healthcare companies. And then they sell it as, oh, look at all these great reasons to go into the private sector for Medicare Advantage. And you know what? Since it's controlled, you don't even have to pay that 20% that you normally have to pay under Medicare, because we cover everything Medicare Advantage says, right? What they really mean is that we actually cure, or we try to take care of you on the cheap. Before I get into the thing, I want to get to the psychology, folks. The psychology that you have been taught for a long time is that mathematics no longer matter. Why? They're trying to tell you that Medicare Advantage, which has all the costs of private companies, meaning shareholders have to be paid, advertising has to be paid, many different people have to be paid in Medicare Advantage. In Medicare alone, none of that has to be paid. So Medicare cost is only at 3% or so overhead. Medicare Advantage charges the government 20% more, and then they make some money on that. But they lie to you and tell you, oh, it's so much better. You ask anybody who had any real hospital stay, who ever had real issues with health care, with their health, if they prefer Medicare Advantage or Medicare. Medicare Advantage wants a whole lot of healthy old people to be in there so that they can clean up. And this isn't a Republican or Democratic thing, people. So if you're listening to us here and you're a Republican, this hurts you too. It hurts everybody. But anyhow, so when my mother-in-law was making no more marginal improvements, the marginal improvements were done. She was not going to get any better. She was probably going to be at a standard state. In reality, deep on the inside, I couldn't tell my wife this, but deep on the inside, I know where we were heading, because the telltale signs were always there. But when you are the immediate, when you are the kid, the daughter, you can't see that. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. They wanted her out of that hospital, which costs more than her going into that 20-day Medicare facility that's paid for just 20 days, and thereafter you have to fork out $100 and something a day, and eventually over $1,000 a day. They want you out of the hospital because they are being charged for that. So every day, in as much as they need to work her out more, they're asking my wife, have you found the place yet? Have you found the place yet? And you know how it is. You got to look around. You have to investigate these places. I mean, nobody knew the woman was going to have a stroke on Christmas Day, so you have to do these things. But the constant pressure on my wife and her sisters were on. The constant pressure, get the hell out of here. We need you out of here. While they work those nurses like horses. The nurses were wonderful. These nurses that attended to my mother-in-law were wonderful. They were the most caring people, but they worked for evil institutions. They worked for an evil corporatocracy. They worked for people who only cared about the best way to maximize the profits of the executives and the profits of the shareholders. So we need to get her to hell out of that hospital. And that's what they were telling her. They were saying it with smiles, get the hell out of here. Well, you know what? Interest in faith is a wonderful thing when it comes to the corporatocracy. Again, I knew where we were heading. I knew where we were heading. I knew it. Unfortunately, they were hoping that we could get her to hell out of there before the inevitable. They wanted her out of there quickly because they knew what was about to happen. But by the time my wife and her sister and brother found a place, she was too critical to be moved. So she had to remain a bit longer in that hospital. And deep down inside, because remember, Medicare Advantage pays everything, right? My mother-in-law did what the news media, my mother-in-law did what those advertisers told her to do. My mother-in-law did what they said, hey, it's better off for you if you go with Medicare Advantage. Well, the truth of the matter is my mother-in-law kind of suck it to them at the end. Because when she was going to be moved, she took, unfortunately, a turn for the worst. And they then had to keep her there longer. And they had to give her oxygen. And they had to give her all these treatments because, you know what? That's what they had to do. And then nobody had decided on a DNR or any one of those things. Like I have mentioned in other videos before, I have a DNR. None of this is going to happen to me because of, like I always tell my wife, if you don't pull all the plugs on me as soon as you know I'm no longer viable or that I don't want to live a distressed life, my ghost, if there's a ghost, I'm going to come back and get you. But I'm just trying to put some levity here. But she took a turn for the worse, and they had her on oxygen. Well, after the family, the sisters and brothers got together, they decided, after all, that the life that she was struggling, she was in pain, she hurt, she didn't sleep, but in increments, and she suffered, and she suffered, and she suffered. And they gave her the oxygen, and finally, a doctor got to the family to let them know that really there was not much to be done. And they agreed yesterday that they would remove the oxygen. And when they removed the oxygen, it wasn't but 45 minutes or so before my mother-in-law, a woman that I love dearly, passed out of the physical. Now, the reason I said this is because you would think that is the end of the story. You would think that is the end of the story. But I don't think even my wife, her sister, her brother, her niece that were there as we watched her take her last breath, I don't think they understood what the people, another private corporation that came in to that room was all about. And people, listen to this, because my wife and her family then moved my mother-in-law into hospice. And Medicare handles hospice as well. And in this case, it's Medicare Advantage who took care of another hospice service that WellCare brought in to take care of business, right? Remember, I said take care of business, because for them, humanity has no value. To them, it's just a business. The human beings are just a cog to make a profit. So what happened? The night before, on Tuesday night, my wife is filling out all the hospice papers, and they want to know, well, okay, what is the funeral home that you're going to use, etc., etc. My God, the woman isn't even dead yet. And they're asking these questions and say, oh, well, you probably should try to find one. And all the while, I am listening keenly. I am trying to be as honest. My wife needs the space to handle the business. That's her job to do. And I'm there just in the support role. I'm watching. And I'm watching this guy interrogating her about funeral homes and all these kinds of things, okay? And I am putting the pieces together in my head. What are they talking about? Well, I didn't quite understand why they were so keen about funeral homes yet. But one of the things I asked the guy is, why is it that you're bringing another nurse in here? He said, oh, well, let me first let you know that your mother-in-law is no longer at this hospital. In other words, she is in the same hospital and in the same room, but she's no longer at that hospital. She's now with a separate company that is contracted with that hospital to use the same room that she is in to offer the hospice services. Wow. They have this stuff down to a business. So now all the billing, etc., goes to this new company that's handling the hospice of my mother-in-law. So now when it's time to remove the oxygen, it's supposed to be 9 in the morning, and they bring the chaplain in, taken care of by the hospice as well, and all these other people coming in from the hospice service, and they're doing their thing, right? But you can see that what they're trying to do is hurry up and die, hurry up and remove the oxygen, and they stay there as long as they can. They run to another dying person, and that's what they're doing. And by the way, by no means is this the fault of these nurses that work for the hospice company. They are doing what they have to do. They are doing what this evil system tells them to do. I have no animosity to all the goodness that these nurses, even from the hospice company, gave to my mother-in-law and to my wife and her family. I have no problems with that service. These people were human beings with a job. They had to work. They were doing as instructed by an evil, profit-hungry corporatocracy. That is what it was all about. So anyhow, after the oxygen was removed, within 45 minutes, my mother-in-law was dead. She had passed. And after we got through the grief and the crying, it was just a little, and when one of our nieces went out to tell the nurse, we thought Aura Lee Jacobs had passed. At that point, the nurses came in, checked her vitals. Indeed, she was no longer with us. And the hospice people were right there. Remember in that last video that I spoke about the parasites coming in to clean up, to make sure they can take it all back, to make sure the profit is all there. Okay, my mother-in-law is laying in bed. The first thing they ask, Okay, what about the funeral home? Where is she going? Where is your mother-in-law going to be going? And my wife and her sisters, well, aren't you going to put her in the morgue until all of that is taken care of? We have to go out there and shop around for these things. These things can run from, and all of they start to, are you going to cremate her? I mean, I am going to be cremated, okay? I don't want to, I think funerals are ridiculous. All right, funerals cost anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000. One of the hospice nurses says, "Yes, my father just died in Louisiana, and it cost them $35,000." I'm like, that's a wedding. But anyhow, so they're bugging us about where's the funeral home and all that kind of stuff, and the pressure is on. So I finally say, look, that's what they're working on right now. In other words, and then my wife says, could you leave us alone? Let us sit down as a family and figure these things out. Because they were right in the room. Again, I understand it's not their fault. They have directives. It's clear they had directives. Get those people out of that hospital room as fast as possible because the hospice company has to pay that bill. So they want them to hell out of there. That's the way it works in America. So after that was complete, they found a place. They found a place where the funeral, who would handle her body, who would be handling the caskets and everything else. They found a place. Luckily, her brother knew somebody who gave an affordable price to get that taken care of, and we had somebody to come pick her up and all of that. But the sad thing about it is the urgency with which they wanted her out of there, because they didn't want them, given that she was now under the care of that corporation who handles hospice, they did not want to have to take care of the mortgage bill, or rather not the mortgage, the freezer in the. I am getting so old, but you know where I'm talking about. They didn't want to have to take care of the bill at the morgue. So they wanted her out of there. They wanted her vacated quickly. It's amazing. They treat everything like cattle on a line. Dead person in, or rather a sick person in. Can we do anything for you? We can no longer do anything for you. Get out of here, because at that point you're costing us money. Folks, a lot of you here, the right-wingers that are on my show right now that are sending me messages like, oh, why don't you have... Look, this is going to happen to most of your relatives, if not you. There are a few people that work for, in the totality, corporations where a lot of these things are bought. There are a few people who buy certain kinds of insurance that mitigate this. But even if you have insurance, read the fine print, because it's a money-making business. It's a money-making business that tries to simply get out of paying their bills. That's what it's all about. And the sooner we understand that, the quicker we'll say Medicare for all is the only answer. I want to give you guys another thing. This one here I think is theft. My mother-in-law was on a feed-in tube. My mother-in-law was a feed-in tube. Okay? And that feed-in tube, she wasn't eating a lot within the feed-in tube. They weren't giving her a whole lot of food. But the amount of food they contracted for was a ton. So we are out there in the room, in one of the rooms, and they keep bringing in these liquid food that they're feeding her through a pipe, in a tube in her gut. And every few hours, a few of those tubes come in. And guess what? They're just piling up there. And my wife told them, why don't you stop bringing all that? My mother's not eating all of this food. Why is she getting all this food? And I looked at my wife with a special look. And she's like, why are you looking at me like that? And I'm like, don't you understand what this is all about? This is about the hospital bilking Medicare. This is about the hospital charging as much as they can. Keep throwing whatever they can throw into that room. As many, it's funny because one of the nurses said, we are billed as a part of the room. The nurses are, but everything else is billed independently. So they keep throwing food into the room. They keep throwing masks into the room. Everything that they can change and they can bill, they keep throwing it into the room. When I talk about a healthcare system that is inefficient because it's in the hands of private corporations, that's what I mean, right? Because look, the duty of the private corporation is to maximize profits for shareholders, and executives make a ton of money. That's it. All right? I don't have a problem with that if it doesn't have to have a material effect on your humanity, if it doesn't have to have an effect on your survival. But when it comes to the point that those tenets start to hurt people, by God, it needs to change. Healthcare does not belong in the private sector. We've had the experiment between Medicare and Medicare Advantage. And the only people that can possibly like Medicare Advantage is those people who have never had to use Medicare Advantage for any real illness, for any real sickness. Because what they realize rather quickly is that the things that they want, they cannot have. The things that the doctors want to provide them to make their lives better cannot be provided. I wish more Americans would understand this. Again, like I put in the beginning of the program, because most people are not sick at one time, at the same time, politicians can get away with that. Because what occurred to my mother-in-law, many can say, oh, well, that's just an off case. Well, no, my mother-in-law had Medicare Advantage. My mother-in-law, had she lived and had to be in a special place, recovery place, it could have bankrupted the entire family. When we calculate the amount of money that would have had to be spent to keep her alive and non-functioning, was cost prohibitive if placed in an institution, and with folks that are not very much able to do the work that would be required for a heavyset woman to take care of in this regard would be tough. Yesterday, I was at another meeting, and another person says, my mother went through hell. This is again, this is not a Republican or Democratic thing. This is a human thing. And every Republican or conservative who comes out and continues to talk about wanting to have the private sector and wanting choices and all that, you don't know what you're talking about, my friends. You don't understand what the private sector is all about. And in healthcare, the private sector, it makes no sense to have one. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through, we got a whole ton of messages here, and I'm going to go through as many as I can that's on the subject. Daniel Ledo wanted to say, can we spend a few minutes on the inhumanity of socialist regimes of the 20th century? 10 million. I am not even going to go into that political idiocy, my dear brother Daniel Ledo, because you're talking crap. When you talk about Denmark and all these people, they're much happier than we are. They're all democratic socialist states. That doesn't mean capitalism doesn't exist in them. It simply means that capitalism is not the sole, it doesn't play the major part of the economy as it does in the United States, where in healthcare, the government is just seen as whom is pilfered for the private sector, like I illustrated with my mother-in-law. A lot of the Medicare bills paid for by the taxpayer, the government, but it goes right into the coffers of the private companies. You know not of what you speak. Christine Park says no war, that she was still talking about Iran portion that I spoke about. Let's see, Michael Dean Newton, I agree the media is hard on the left, yet allows the GOP to be outright. You're right about that. Daniel Ledo says, I'm embarrassed for Iran. They see like petulant, ill children pitching. You don't understand history, of course, Daniel, so I won't go and give that and try to give you an answer to something that more than likely I don't think you've studied up on. You're using right-wing talking points, which generally fail in its intelligence. Let's say pitchforks. People feel free repressive regimes to go to less repressive ones. So socialism doesn't have to be repressive, nor would I be for a repressive government. Thank you so kindly for that very intelligent response, Mr. Get the Pitchforks. Christine, I think U.S. or Israel did it. I mean, Christine, I'm not sure. And it could be that Iran mistakenly shot it down. We mistakenly shot down an Iranian plane. from one of our ships when we thought they were something else. Daniel Ledo says, is Egberto using fear to push his propaganda? Americans will be killed in the future. No, it's not propaganda. It follows good history. Lee Grant says, I do not know Egberto was a foreign policy expert. Egberto is not a foreign policy expert, but Egberto know a hell of a lot about foreign policy, so thank you so kindly. But no, I would not call myself an expert, just somebody that uses logic like many other Americans who've come onto my programs and given very prescient and intelligent narrative. So thank you so kindly. Daniel Ledo said, absurd with your logic. Trump is responsible for everything. You sound like a fool. I don't think so. I think if you look at the genesis of what caused that plane to go down, it is quite simple to acknowledge that had Mr. Soleimani not been killed, that plane would not have gone down. So I think the tying the connecting the dots is quite simple. I think it would be a fool who doesn't see the connection of those dots. I don't usually use the word fool. I'm just repeating what you've said in the converse. Thank you so kindly, however. Christine Park says, only experts can discuss things. Well, Christina, it's amazing because experts on TV have been wrong. While most experts claim Donald Trump couldn't win, guys like myself and Michael Moore and others says it was likely that Donald Trump was going to win because of what Hillary Clinton was doing and not doing within certain communities. And guess what? Our realization was correct. And the ones that Daniel Ledo would have called experts were actually wrong. Lee Grant says, seems this is just the latest way to attack Trump. It's not the latest way to attack Trump. Trump needs to be attacked because Trump is not up to the job. Get the Pitchfork says, Portugal and Nepal, to a limited extent, some people have fled to Cuba, but I think Cuba is repressive. Yes, Cuba to some extent is definitely repressive, though their healthcare system is much better humanely than ours in the United States. They may not have the bells and whistles, but nobody ever has to worry about, oh my God, if I go to the doctor, I won't be seen. Rose Williams says, glad to see you back today. I'm so glad to be back to see all of you guys. You know I love you all, and you guys make my day. You make my day. Just being able to have these conversations. Lee Grant, I know of a few U.S. criminals who fled to Cuba, but it wasn't for economic reasons, and they weren't all criminals either, sir. Diane Scare says, Bernie Sanders 4 years ago asked folks if they wanted to share their stories about healthcare, good or bad, million stories. They're still coming in, and others have opened sites for these. Thank you so kindly for putting that out there, Diane Scare. Christine Park says, Costa Rica doesn't call itself socialist that I know of, but it's pretty much, you know what? Exactly. Costa Rica, Panama all have what many on the right would call socialized medicine. Most of us call humane medicine. Get the Pitchfork says, I want to carefully add in socialist elements, but probably not have a full socialism, a mix, something. Pitchfork, you're absolutely very smart. That's what most of us want. Capitalism is, as currently practiced, is too vicious. Capitalism doesn't know anything about humanity. That's why government needs to be there to put humanity into what society is going to be. And where capitalism excels, go ahead and let it excel. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, Christine Park, that's why I don't bother paying for Advantage Part. You're very smart, Christine Park, very smart. Get the Pitchforks. I want single payer. That's what we need, sir. Comes up out of my taxes, everything taken care of. That makes more sense. It's more intelligent to have something like that. And we are all in one profit pool. And as such, it does not affect people. So those people wanting that, very intelligent, very smart. Lee Grant, Pitchfork said, Lee Grant, well, that's nice. According to 45,000 people die per year from preventative. Yeah, we do know that. Daniel Ledo and others get mad when I say that our healthcare system kill. And since the Republicans are the ones in support mostly, and some blue dog Democrats are in support of this current healthcare system, I think they should all be charged with voluntary manslaughter. And the reason I say not even involuntary but voluntary is that they know that people will die because of the current healthcare system that we have. Get Pitchforks. We have worse healthcare than Cuba, which is true. Do you live in Cuba? No, but I've been to Cuba and I have friends in Cuba. And when Cubans are laughing at your own healthcare system, one should wonder. Anyhow, Christine Park, Cuba not only has great healthcare, they share it with any country that needs it. And not only that, they train our doctors. We have doctors that can go over to Cuba, get their education for free, and come back to the United States and practice. It's amazing, right? And what we do here is we say, do you have your papers? The country that likes to promote itself as the country that most care. Wow. Okay, Sean Perry says, vote for Andrew Yang. Let me tell you something, Sean Perry. I have 3 candidates right now. My 3 candidates in the order of which I support currently is Bernie Sanders, numero uno, Elizabeth Warren, numero dos, and Andrew Yang, numero tres. And I think any one of those 3, I would proudly go out there and vote for. And people say, well, Andrew Yang isn't as progressive as you or Egberto, or as progressive as Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. I says, Andrew Yang shows some progressiveness, and in some instances more progressiveness than either of them. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. We need to have the right people out there, and I think any one of those 3 should be considered the right persons. Folks, we're getting close to the end. Okay, let's see. Get picks for why isn't it not considered patriotic to want to improve one's country, make it better? It is, but you see, they have to put out a narrative there to scare you. That is the whole deal. We got to put a narrative out there to scare you, and anything that you say that is good, they want to call it socialism, because if they equate good to socialism, and then when you ask for good things, they call you a socialist, it scares Americans into not voting for it, and that's why we've been here so far. Folks, please remember that this is a show that requires your support. I want to ask you so kindly to join the family, the Politics Done Right family. It's easy to get there. As I'm going to throw in the feed again, you can go ahead and become a subscriber by going to patreon.com. I just added that into the feed. You can support our equipment purchases by supporting us at our independent media GoFundMe. You can also support us via PayPal, which I've just added into the feed as well. And of course, you can go to our store and purchase at store.politicsdoneright.com and check out that t-shirt. We have the t-shirt that says, I support independent media, and of course we have the one with Donald Trump that says, oh, Donald Trump, please don't impeach me, please don't impeach me, to Nancy Pelosi. And for those from the Yang gang, you remember what Yang says? I bet you guys didn't believe I was still gonna be here, and guess what? Brother Yang is still there. But again, go to our store.politicsdoneright.com, and get one of those t-shirts, support, and by getting anything at our store, you're also supporting Politics Done Right. We do need your support. We cannot exist without you, and right now, we're way behind on the support that we need to maintain our viability. So please go ahead and support Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!